This evening, I would like to share with you a story of my ministry in Canada. Don't worry, I'm not running out of stories about Canada. When I was first charged in Canada, in the western coast of Newfoundland, I found myself a frequent visitor to the local hospital. There, it was in Stephenville. Stephenville is important for us in the United States for two reasons. There was a huge military base installation there, and it was also the last place that Elvis Presley served in the Army. Anyway, I often was at the hospital, usually not for many happy things, but on this occasion it was a particularly happy occasion as one of my congregants was giving birth to a little baby boy. And I went up there to baptize him because it was the tradition in Newfoundland to baptize right at birth for fear that they wouldn't be around long enough to wait for the formal baptism of the family. And so oftentimes I would travel to the hospital. And so it was a wonderful occasion. It was one of the biggest baby boys I think I've ever seen. And about an hour or so into my time of visiting with the family, I had the doctor there. It was only a 30-bedroom hospital. In fact, they didn't do births there very often because of the danger. But I had one of the doctors stick his head in the room and said, "Father Nick, you really ought to be getting home." And, I listened to people, so I said, "Sure, what's going on?" He said, "There's a big snowstorm that's headed in." He's like, "You really need to get on the road." So it was about 50 miles from the hospital to back to my house. And so I got on the road from Stephenville, heading south, and sure enough, I got about 20 kilometers into my route, and when I hit the big snowstorm, right? It was unlike anything that I'd seen. I've never seen that much snow come out of the sky at one time, and it was very disorienting. I was in my Mazda 3. It was about a 5-year-old car that was new to me. I had snow tires on it, which give you a great sense of confidence. And but I found that no matter what kind of light I had on the front of the car, be it fog lights or headlights, the snow came at the window, and it looked like an episode from Star Trek when they hit like warp speed. Just the sense of the snow, just like, and I literally could not see. But one of the things that the doctor told me is like, don't stop. No matter what you do, don't stop. Just keep going. But the only way that I could see the road was turning the heat all the way up in my car, rolling down my window, getting in the center lane. It was a 4-lane highway with 30, 40-foot deep ditches on each side because that's where they push the snow, when it would get big so it wouldn't melt into the road. And I could see that because it had been gone over at least 1 or 2 times by a plow truck. I could see that the road line, the painted road line, it had that effervescence to it. You could see sort of the reflection of the light. And so like a Labrador retriever, I had turned the heat up, I hung my head out of the door or the window of the car, and I just looked at that line. And I followed it. I didn't dare stop, and I followed it all the way back to Robinson, which is where I lived. And somehow I saw the road sign for our turnoff, which was about this tall on the snowbank, where they had plowed the snow to the side. And I was able to make it home. I give this story because it was one of the scariest physical times in my life. This and one other time in my life where I sincerely worried about my mortality. I was worried that a snowplow was going to come behind me, not see me. All these sort of things were racing through my mind. I thought I knew snow, but I didn't know that kind of snow, different type of snow. But I kept my head down and I kept it focused, and I just took it quarter of a mile by quarter of a mile, going about 30 or 40 miles an hour, and I made it home. It reminds me a lot, though, I think, when I remember this story about probably what the wise men are kind of thinking as they're in their route. I mean, it's nice to think they sort of always had this sort of compass sort of orientation where they could just look to the star and just follow the star. But much of the way in which they were going, from what we know from all the extra biblical resources, is that the path that they were going was the spice trade path, the spice trade trail, and it was not an easy one. They would have to overcome mountains, literal mountains, that would take people some quick folks, it would take them months. For slower folks, it would take an entire year just to get over the mountain ranges that they had to get over. And they were traveling this way to see and to find Jesus. These were folks in the society. We get the word of the wise men, the magi, from another, that's the interpretation from Greek, but it's really Mongol, right? So they're coming from the east. And it's these people that are coming from the east, and they're traveling on this spice trail, and they're coming up, and they're looking for Jesus. And they're these folks that are looking for the divine, the majestic, the amazing. They're priestly sort of folks, wise. Kings is sort of a misnomer. They're not kings. But they're set on this path because they have faith in a destination of what to come. Through all their charting of all their astrology, they know that this star will come, and so they embark upon this trail. There's an interesting sort of extra-biblical resource that's been discovered recently. It's the Revelation of the Magi. And it sort of tells the intricate details of their whole journey outside of the Bible, found in the Vatican, recently translated. But this text says that they were searching for an unexpected blessing. And that the way that they came to find it was that they were looking for a star, and this star and this energy for them turned into a child, where it sat upon Bethlehem, above where Jesus lay. This light, this energy turned into a star. And they write in this revelation of the Magi that this is one of the many occasions where I've happened upon the world. What that is a mention to is to say that God is speaking to them directly and saying, this is not the first time that I've appeared to you like this. This is just the first time that you're realizing it. The insinuation there is that Jesus is the genesis of every tradition of faith and belief. It's a pretty heavy claim. It's an interesting one. I'm not professing it as though it's the ultimate fact, but I think it's an interesting way to say that Jesus is sort of being born in a way, not for the first time, but for many times. And I think to some extent that's how we come to understand our relationship with Christ as we begin this new year. It's an understanding that Christ is being born to us, not for the first time for all of humanity, but for the first time for us to see him, but yet again. How will we comprehend it? How will we come to understand it? How will we see it? And how will it inform the way that we live our lives? There is a lot that rests in Christ. There's a lot that rests in our relationship with God. We put a lot there. There's hope, there's love, there's joy, there's all those wonderful things, but it's also a place where we're putting all the hard stuff too, all the challenging stuff. But it's a reminder that Christ is present for all that, if we are just willing to see him in that new way this one time, but yet again. Amen.